Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another session of Agile Testing and Automation. Just going to go straight into previous session, which is last week. We looked at test-driven development and unit testing. And as I said last week, today we are going to be looking at acceptance test-driven development and behavior-driven development. Okay, so just quickly, as a reminder, just as a gentle reminder, that the Agile testing principle of testing first and encoding later that I showed you last week and the week before. So just a quick, gentle reminder that Agile supports, or it's one of the principles of Agile testing, to test first and implement later. As I said, always, I like to repeat some of the stuff because repetition is a good thing. So what is acceptance test-driven development, or ATDD? What is it? It is a collaborative approach which defines acceptance criteria and tests during creation of the user story. So it refers to a set of predefined, well, that is acceptance criteria. You notice that I've underlined acceptance criteria and tests in the definition. In case somebody's wondering, acceptance criteria is a set of predefined requirements that must be met in order to mark a user story as complete. Okay, so they are normally used to confirm that the story is done if the team if the team has a definition of done. Acceptance criteria is used to define so. But the way ATDD works is that during requirement analysis, when the user stories are created, the team get together and define this acceptance criteria. That is whatever we want to use as the definition of done. And then these acceptance criteria, let me just get rid of this. Yeah, these acceptance criteria get converted into acceptance tests, which can also be referred to as scenarios, usually, but not always or necessarily by a tester. So they're converted, the acceptance criteria are converted into acceptance tests, either by a test analyst or any member of the team. And usually we do recommend that these are independently validated by, again, anybody in the team, but usually or ideally a business user. Okay. Before I move on, let me just get rid of this. Right. And these acceptance criteria also drives implementation, or these acceptance tests drive into implementation of the code itself. Right. I think we used a diagram last week, so I thought, why not get a diagram that will help us, an activity flow diagram. Sorry? Oh, an activity flow diagram that will help us put it into perspective. You will notice here at the top that we have acceptance tests. Yeah, so once we've got the acceptance criteria, acceptance tests are written, which then goes through the TDD cadence. If you remember last week, TDD, we went through how TDD works. The tests are written initially, they are run, which will fail. And then when they fail, the code is then written. And then this gets run again. When it passes, it then gets refactored and passed on to production. Okay, so when acceptance tests are written and reviewed, reviewed by somebody, they initially get executed and they will fail because there's no code behind it. The code is then written, or it goes through the whole, like I said, acceptance test route. Code gets written, gets executed again. That is the acceptance test. And then, I wish I was using the, hold on one second, let's see if I can find, I can't find it. Anyway, yeah, so, so the code gets reviewed or is demoed. It goes in the form of the tests. When they pass, they go in the form of what do you call it? A feature file to a customer, PO usually, product owner usually. It gets demoed to the product owner. He will then sign it off, and then this gets accepted as work that is shippable. And then the team can commit to another story, right? It is worth mentioning that ATDD helps to determine and inform stakeholders that acceptance criteria are met. Okay, that is when they pass or fail. It helps to inform the stakeholders that the acceptance criteria have been met, and it also creates reusable steps for regression testing. And of course, this can be used for system and acceptance tests as well. And then agile teams usually automate. A lot of articles I've read say they don't need, or it doesn't say they don't need to, but what I know is usually they are. 9 times out of 10, these are automated. But interestingly, I read a lot of articles that says they may be automated. Wherever I've worked, we've had to automate this. I guess the reason they probably say they don't have to be or they may be automated is that the team can decide to keep them as they are, because this is kind of a living document as well. Okay, so that is it for acceptance criteria. I'll move on to our next one, which is behavior-driven development. This behavior-driven development was originated by a guy called Dan North. So I've seen a lot of explanations or definitions, but I thought I'll pick his and then use for the purpose of this presentation. So he said using behavior-driven development is using examples, that is referring to different scenarios, using examples at multiple levels to create a shared understanding and surface uncertainty to deliver software that matters. So what he was trying to say is that we use these examples like scenarios, which we'll be looking at some of them. We use these scenarios at multiple levels to create a shared understanding and surface uncertainty to deliver software that matters. This approach encourages teams to deliver software that matters by emphasizing the interaction between the business and technical people. If you go to his website, dannorth.net somebody might want to write this down, /introducing BDD, he kind of explains how he couldn't understand the T in TDD. It didn't make sense to them. So, remember that one of the key things in Agile is communication, of course, with all stakeholders and, visibility and all that. But when the programmers wrote, when they did their coding or did the work, or when they wrote their test, the T representing test meant nothing to him, and he always had to ask a lot of questions. So he had to come up with ways that will make it easy for everybody to understand, hence the shared understanding. So the approach encourages teams to deliver software that matters to the business or customers by emphasizing interaction between the business and technical team. And the key thing here is that BDD uses examples, which we will be looking at, examples and scenarios to communicate how the application will behave. Okay, to the end users using languages or shared language. So when, let's just say, PO comes up with like his backlog of user stories or requirements, he will then share this or collaborate with the with the BA. They come up with, you know, a clearer version of what it means. They then do the same thing with the team, and then at some point bring businesses in. The whole point of BDD is that whenever they've got the acceptance criteria, what we've defined acceptance criteria or testing or whatever is going to be done, we want the business and anybody who looks at whatever's been written to understand it. We want to see the behavior, the actual behavior of the application in whatever is being written or whatever is being coded. So that is where BDD came from. And I want to show you a few examples here. So I've got, for instance, a user story here, which says, as a registered customer, I want to log into Jollof Cafe website so that I can place an order. So we see an example of, in order for this user story to be implemented, we see an example of a scenario that can be tested, right? You will see the language here is in, you know, this is what an example of a test, right? This test has been written in a way that anybody who reads it, I mean, if it's an English-speaking country, anybody who reads it will be able to understand it. So the test here is to verify that valid users can log in, and then you can see the steps. Again, let me see if I can find my, okay. Yeah, so can you see my mouse? So you can see the test here, and then you can see the steps that will verify. You can see the individual test. Given I'm on Jollof Cafe website, when I enter valid login credentials, then I'm successfully logged in and I can see the order placing dashboard. So this is an example of how this user story will be implemented. And you can see the language here. It is clear. Anybody who looks at it, be whether you're technical or non-technical, this is something that you can understand, and it clearly explains it clearly explains every step and whatever is going to be tested and the outcome. Typically, this will be written by a test analyst, and as I said, validated by a business person or in anyone on the team, right? The developer will pick this up, go and write code behind every step. So again, if I bring my pointer, my mouse, where are we? Yeah. So behind every step, like given I'm on a Jollof, or I should say, I'm on the Jollof Cafe website login page, there will be code. The developer will pick this whole test and write code behind every single one of these. As a test analyst, if the test analyst has automation coding skills and can write some automation test, he will also go and then write some code behind these. I mean, these behind each of these could be test cases, because to go to Jollof Cafe's website, you have to write a test that will launch the website. You have to write a test that will verify that we're on that website, etc. Another test will look at, you know, when I enter valid login credentials. So behind all of these lines are tests, but looking at this particular scenario or the test that we've got here, this can be understood by anyone, whether you're technical or not. So it's a common language which describes the behavior of the user story or feature that is being worked on. So this is an example of what BDD test looks like. I've got more examples. I've got another example here. So you can see the same user story. If I go back, the same user story. What I've done is I've broken the same user story into different tests, because remember we said we look at different examples. So this one just verifies that valid users can log in. The next one will say check that users with invalid credentials cannot log in. So again, we've got, where's my mouse pointer? Again, we've got the scenario here. Here's the scenario or test. We want to check that users with invalid credentials cannot log in. And then you can see the steps of each test, which says, given I'm on Jollof Cafe website login page, when you can see this particular step at the top will be reusable. Okay, so every time I want to implement a similar test, I can reuse this line, and we'll talk about stuff like reusability, etc. when we come to automation. But clearly, you can see this whole test here. Check that users with invalid credentials cannot log in. That's got its own scenarios or test. Anyone, programmer or tester, can pick this up and verify it. The developer may write unit test, TDD, whereas a test analyst or an automation tester can also write their system test, acceptance test. They can use this for regression testing as well. So this is it. Then there's another example here which says verify that users with invalid username cannot log in. The difference between these two tests, this when here says when I submit invalid login credentials, right? Another tester may write it in a different way. We can split this particular one, when I submit invalid login credentials, into two different steps and say when I submit username, and then another one will say when I submit password and I click on the submit button, then I'm unable to log in. So this makes it clear for anybody to understand. Again, the next one says verify that users with invalid username cannot log in. So this is just breaking it down to test in a different way. Make sure that with this test, we've got valid password, but an invalid username. Click the button, and then the result would be that the user will be unable to log in. Okay, so let's go to the next one, which is the last example that I've got here for the same user story. We can see here, where's my pointer? We can see here that the test scenario is verify that users with invalid password cannot log in. So again, it is clear, visible, that what we're testing here is that we want to check that if the user has invalid password, they cannot log in. And you can see this reusable step here again. When I'm on Jollof Cafe website login page, when I enter valid username with invalid password and I click submit button, then I'm unable to log in. So this is very clear. This is in clear language that anybody, business user, well, let's just say technical or non-technical person can understand. To summarize this, in each of these examples, each of these examples represent how the user story will behave, or different ways that the user story will behave. And each of these, as I've said several times, test is written in very comprehensive, natural language that anybody can. If it was in France, we'll probably write it in French language. For all stakeholders and team members, technical and non-technical, to understand. And you will see that, they've used some very, like the given when, then keywords here, which anybody will understand. The given basically is to say that when given simply means some context, and then when represents when an action that is carried out, and then the then tells you that there has to be an expectation, or this is what I'm expecting to see. The code, when it's written, as I've said several times, in this way, well, not the code, the test, when it's written in this way, then gets implemented at every step. So I've explained all of this, and the shared common language in which the tests are written, this common language, that is, let's just say English, or even the given, when, then format, kind of bridges the communication. As I've said several times, again, it bridges the communication, or it bridges communication barrier between different stakeholders, or even within the team. And as I said, technical or non-technical, anyone can understand it. It enhances visibility as well. And also, if any of these tests, if any level breaks, fails, you know exactly where to go to fix this. So this brings us to the end of my explanation, or my presentation on BDD and TDD. Next time we come back, I will be talking about the test pyramid. Then we will also look at test levels, and then we'll look at test types. So that's the end of it. Thank you very much. I will now allow questions and feedback from you. Thank you.
Eric, we've got a question. How do I come up with test plans?
Test plans. How do I come up with test plan? Okay, so you probably missed the session on test plan. Forgive me. I will advise, if you go to the YouTube site, you will be able to see our stuff on web test plans. But we've done a session on test plans. That's one of the very early stuff that we did. I think, William, a few people have asked about the video. So okay, I think people do not know that we've got previous sessions and where to find them.
I'll drop a link to the videos now so that anyone can find them and pick them.
Yes, someone just said, can you share the link? Yeah. So yeah, but yeah, please, it doesn't mean that we've answered every question in the past. So please, if you've got any questions or feedback about the slides, about this presentation, please.
So, Eric, yes, if we were looking at the test plan, would the test plan define if we would be using the Gherkin syntax?
So the test plan will mention, yes, at some stage that you will be using this approach. That is, the test strategies will mention for automation. It will say, or maybe not for automation, but then yeah, you will define it in the test plan that we'll be using BDD, TDD, etc. There's a session, I can't remember which section is it, but yes, it has to go in the test plan.
So just an add-on question. I think you've taken us through the Gherkin syntax, given when and then, and I've really enjoyed it. It's now just stuck heavily on my mind. So if we had 100 stories, would we be writing almost about, let's say, 200 of this?
Sorry, I mean,
it is what it is.
Yeah, you want to cover as many. You want to cover, but of course you want to prioritize which tests are important, and so prioritization comes in there. But of course, you want to cover the most important, and you want to cover every test. If you're using it for, especially if you're using it for system testing, I mean, you want to cover every acceptance criteria. You do, definitely. You want to cover every acceptance criteria. But yes, prioritization comes in as well.
So can you go back to one of the examples, because um,
Oops. What have I done wrong?
that's all right.
Oh, okay. I know what I've done. Full screen, and then show presenter. Yep. Okay. Go to this example.
Yeah. So to write this, I know when you start off, it's not the easiest. To start creating, it's like you learning a new language and you using the given, when, then, and as a preamble.
Yeah.
Should it be the role of the test analyst doing all of this, or other team members can help?
I mean, other team members can help. Um, Remember, I'll bring this up again, that because it's a cross-functional team, anyone can do anything. Usually, you want to give this to the person who has the most experience, and the test. The team can do this together.
Yeah.
The BA and the test analyst can do this together. I've worked in places where the BA comes up with this, even makes life easier for everybody, because he wants to make it easier for the test analyst who doesn't understand everything, come up with probably high level, and then through questions, three amigo sessions, the team comes together and then, adds more steps to it. The tester goes and says, I really want to test this line, so I want to make sure that step is covered. So I'm going to put it in to make sure that the developers write code on it, or the person who's going to do the automation testing. So it's a team effort. But I mean, if you're a test analyst, you want to make sure that certain things are covered. So you want to make sure whoever's going to especially automate it or even manually test it, cover these requirements. So you bring them in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
But it doesn't have to be the tester's responsibility. It is usually the tester wants to make sure that we're covering, certain steps. So they want to make sure that gets done. I believe that's why it ended up being the tester's thing, but it doesn't have to be the tester's.
So a follow-up question is: we have no tester.
Okay.
Does that mean we miss all of this?
Well, if you have no tester, there's a good chance that you will miss tests. You will miss certain things that should have been validated or verified. That is very, yeah, because I mean, the developer's thinking, I want to implement stuff. Yeah. The tester's job, or what the tester wants to do and what they get paid for, is to break the system for everyone's good, just so that we can fish out potential issues that can go into live that could cost the business money. So in order to save the business money, the tester says, I'm going to break everything just so that we can fix it before we push the code into live. So, yeah, it is too risky to not engage testing.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yes,
Thank
please.
you for that. And I really enjoy it. My question is, I've heard in past that they said your user story is not smart, your acceptance criteria it needs to be smart. How do we ensure that when we are writing user stories and acceptance criteria, we write it we use the smart method? And another question is, how do we ensure that we adequately, because it may be possible that we not cover every area that we need to cover. How do we actually measure that to be able to ensure that we cover every part of that story?
Okay. So William's smiling because I'm sure you're thinking, oh, this. I'm trying to find that acronym. that helps in verifying user stories. If anybody knows it, and let's test everybody.
Maths?
I don't know about
Uh,
smart, but there's another one that I'm. Oh
Um,
God,
um,
I've forgotten it. If anybody knows it, let's use this to test the house.
Is it a card conversation? See the three C's?
I mean, that might be one of them, but I have one that I normally invest. That's it. Whoever put
Okay.
invest there. Oh man, yeah,
Gosh.
that's what I was looking for. Yeah,
Eric, you
so
need to send her one of your books.
yeah, invest principle. That's it. Thank you so much. Yeah, so that is one of the ways you might want to look it up. I believe that is one of the ways that you make sure you've got good user stories. If anybody has other ways, you can suggest it that we can all go and read up. But then in terms of acceptance criteria, I believe that is a team effort. The developers, testers, BA, and sometimes the product owner may chip in as well. But it is the team, agile team's effort. If I'm wrong, somebody can correct me. But I believe that as far as I'm aware, it is definitely a team effort. It's a collaborative task. So once the team comes together, they can do that together. And if you want to bring a business user in, just so that they also chip in, you lose nothing. Okay, to make sure that you've got the right acceptance criteria.
So, Lola, to add to that, in creating user stories that would meet the invest principle, what
yes,
I
that was the
tend,
word.
yeah, what I tend to tell people is, if you invite people into a workshop for everyone to tell us what their user story is, it does not really cover the entire system we are building. So you can also use UML diagrams. We've used use case diagrams. When you've produced a use case diagram, it means you've covered mainly the key system parts that the actor would interface with. Once you've produced the use case diagram, you can then go on to produce your various users, customer journey maps or user maps so that you can verify your use case diagram with those user maps or customer journey stories. Then, in addition to it, you could engage or you could work with your teams to create process maps, and then you can add data diagrams like entity relationship diagrams or class diagrams. When you've done all this and someone should ask you, your user story does not really cover what we expect, you can bring out these diagrams to defend or to share with them so that they know where you're coming from. If you only share stories, people would say, look, you're missing something. But if you support your stories with diagrams, it can really help you in communicating them. And then with what Eric said, you just have to invite everyone into, especially testers, into the acceptance testing creation so that they can help and input into it. So to summarize it, create UML diagrams and then invite testers to help you create the Gherkin syntax using for the acceptance criteria.
Yeah, and to add to that, when you're writing the tests, the test, which is the given when then test, you can get wound up with, will someone understand this language and all that kind of thing. You can get wound up with it. So it's easier when you do it collaboratively with a few people, because somebody will just come up with a line and you be like, yep, that fits, and write it down. But it's usually, I would say it is usually should be a team effort. It's easier, works better that way. So yeah.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any more? I think
A
our time is.
question we had was, what's the difference between manual and automation testing, which I think you've also covered in one of the videos, isn't it? Would you give us a quick summary of that?
We've not touched the difference between manual and automation testing. That will probably come in the next two or three Yeah,
Okay.
the next two
Okay.
or three sessions, we're slowly moving into automation testing. So, yeah, good timing, good question, but you will get that in the next two, three sessions.
Sessions. Okay. Any questions? Thank you very much, Eric, and thank you everyone for attending today's session. And Eric has shared great insight, though I find this a big task. Eric has reignited our interest and our knowledge into creating behavior driven development acceptance criteria to help us build a better backlog. So when you look at a backlog, it will consist of your epic features, stories, and then for your stories, you would have to write acceptance criteria so that you can test them and verify the quality of your solution. Again, thank you, Eric.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
For tomorrow, we've got
Thank you.
um, a spotlight on lean budgeting. Lean budgeting. I think this is a topic that everyone has asked on LinkedIn. How do we budget in an agile environment? So we've got Divyam, who's a skilled agile consultant at Accenture, if I'm right. Yes, skilled agile consultant at Accenture, a good friend who's offered to talk on lean budgeting, and he will be joining us tomorrow. So if you want to know more about lean budgeting, please do join DVM. And on Thursday, we've got Shelley Thompson, who will be talking on coaching. So we've got her next topic, and I'll be sharing it in the group chat areas. If you need me to add you to the groups, please just type yes, and I'll add you to the Agile groups. And I'll say thank you, and I look forward to seeing you in our future sessions. Have a wonderful week and day. See you soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, Eric.
Thank you, Eric.